His hand was still on the bottle when he said it. Calm, low, like it wasn't the first time. There's something upstairs I want you to see. I followed. I froze for a second when I saw who was there, then followed him in without a word. Before we dive in, if you've been here before, take a second to like and subscribe. It means more than you know. And if this is your first time, welcome. You picked a good one. Now, let's begin. The rim of my wine glass was cool against my lips, but the low heat from the stone fireplace had already softened my skin. I was perched on the tall bar stool, sundress loose around my ankles as the fire warmed the air around me. I traced the glass's curve without thinking, watching the deep red swirl as the room flickered in gold. The bartender, late 30s, sleeves rolled back, was polishing a bottle behind the counter. There was a steady ease about him, quiet but noticeable. I didn't think anyone would still be up, I said, voiced just above the low jazz drifting through the lodge speakers. The night had emptied around us, just me, the fire, and him. He looked over with a slow grin. Most don't make it past the second glass. I wasn't tipsy, not quite. But the wine, the hush, the firelight, they'd softened the edges of my thoughts. That kind of quiet that blurs your focus just enough to make everything feel possible, or at least worth wondering about. He topped off my glass and rested one arm on the bar, eyes steady on mine. There's something upstairs I want you to see. My fingers froze around the glass. I met his eyes, really met them. There was no push, no signal, just a quiet pause, like the moment before a question. I set the drink down. Is that allowed? His smile didn't shift. Only if you say yes. The hallway was dim, lit by flickering sconces that glowed low against the wood. I followed him quietly, the hallway lit only by flickering sconces. I didn't ask where we were going. Somehow, it felt better not to. At the top of the stairs, he opened a wide door to the left, and I stopped. Inside, two men looked over as the door opened, one by the couch, the other by the doorway. Neither seemed surprised. I stayed still, just for a moment. I heard the soft click of the door behind me. The door eased shut behind me with a soft click, and something in the air shifted, quieter now, heavy with stillness. I stood still, one hand resting lightly against the wood, my focus narrowed, each moment stretching just slightly longer. He stepped past me, close enough that I caught the scent of soap and cedar. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, his voice calm, unhurried. "You've got good timing." The room wasn't what I expected. Wide, firelit, shadows moving to the jazz humming from somewhere unseen. A bottle waited on the table, 3 glasses already poured. The man on the couch, early 40s, silver at his temples, lifted his glass slightly, in silent welcome. The one by the window gave me a slow, curious grin that said he was still deciding what to make of me. I stepped forward, the hem of my sundress trailing softly across the floor. The fire crackled softly behind me, but their presence brought a different kind of focus. The one at the window crossed to me in 2 long strides, and stopped just close enough. "Would you turn around?" he asked, lifting his hand slightly. I let him. His hand met mine, steady and unhurried, and with a gentle pull, he turned me. I turned slowly, the dress settling around my ankles with each step. His eyes didn't leave me, watching quietly as I came to a stop. "You've got this glow," he said, stepping away to refill his drink, like it comes from somewhere else. He passed behind me, close enough that the space felt thinner, tight, charged. "Careful," I said, without meaning it. He didn't answer, just poured himself a drink with steady hands and lowered himself into the couch, posture steady and relaxed. His eyes were unreadable, but steady on mine, like he already knew what I hadn't decided yet. He stepped closer, and every part of me became aware of how near he was. "You okay?" he asked, voice warm against my ear. I nodded, but my voice stayed trapped behind my ribs. His hand settled gently at my sides, quiet, steady contact, nothing more. My breath caught, not in panic, but in something I didn't yet have a name for. "You can still leave," he whispered, "but I hope you don't." I closed my eyes for a moment. The fire behind me crackled. I heard the soft shift of feet, the clink of glass, the low curl of music, and a quiet tension threaded through the room, subtle but impossible to ignore. I stayed still, listening to the quiet stir of the room behind me. I didn't have to say yes. I just didn't step away. The bartender's hand stayed nearby, his presence calm, grounding, as the man by the window set down his glass and stepped closer. I stood between them, the quiet weight of their attention making my breath catch without quite knowing why. "Look at her," the one in front murmured, voice thoughtful. "She feels it too." His hand hovered for a moment, close, deliberate, like the air between us held something neither of us wanted to name. His voice stayed low, steady by my ear. "Tell us if you want to stop," he said. His hands didn't move, just stayed lightly in place, and I let out a slow breath, not realizing I'd been holding it. Thinking had stopped a while ago. One of them guided me forward, just a step, and I reached instinctively for the shoulders in front of me, grounding myself. Behind me, I sensed a quiet shift, but I didn't turn. I tilted my head slightly, unsure what I expected next. The man in front leaned in and kissed me, soft, unhurried. I stayed close. From behind, I felt a light touch along my back, a steady, guiding presence, and heard someone adjusting something near the floor. Everything around me felt deliberate, centered. Still, I didn't speak, couldn't. Somehow, we'd made our way toward the couch. I hadn't noticed when it happened. One of them gently motioned for me to sit, and I did, easing down as the quiet settled in around us. The man who had kissed me knelt in front of me, lifting my chin with 2 fingers until my eyes met his. "Still okay?" he asked, voice low, careful. I nodded once, my breath still unsteady. The bartender moved beside me and rested one hand near mine, calm and close. The third man stepped behind, gently brushing my hair aside. I felt the trace of fingertips along my shoulder, light, as if he were reading something only he could see. The room felt smaller somehow, voices low, movement slower, presence thick in the air. The man in front leaned close again, his eyes steady. Another sat quietly at my side, not touching, just there. The third passed behind, his footsteps soft as they moved past us, like the quiet between us held its own kind of rhythm. The moment I stood from the couch, something shifted. I blinked, surprised by how light I felt, like I'd forgotten to breathe for a moment. I wasn't sure who had guided me forward, only that steady hands were nearby, offering balance without pressure. One of them moved beside me, brushing the fabric at my back as we walked in, quiet. Ahead another smoothed out the edge of the blanket on the bed and met my eyes, calm, composed. They moved with quiet intention, giving me time to find my pace. I sat carefully on the edge of the mattress, the hush in the room deepening as I settled. The warmth from the fire lingered, and I felt it beneath me, steady and grounding. The stillness between us returned, familiar now, centered. One leaned in and placed a kiss on my cheek, a gesture more grounding than anything else. Another knelt nearby, his hand brushing lightly along my arm, focused and calm, like he was learning something wordless. The third stepped closer, his hand gliding briefly past the edge of the blanket. They never rushed. Their movements were quiet, measured like a conversation without words. It felt practiced, not rehearsed, like they understood how to read a room that didn't speak aloud. Another kiss met my shoulder and I paused, surprised by how aware I'd become of every sound around me. One hand rested gently on my cheek. I reached for it instinctively, fingers curling around his forearm, not to pull but to anchor. I shifted slightly, leaning toward where he stood without thinking. They stayed calm. When I lay onto my side, one of them adjusted the pillow behind me, offering gentle support. Another sat nearby, our knees barely touching. The third stayed behind, quiet, present. Their movements stayed careful, as if making room for whatever I needed next. I stayed still, letting the moment shape itself. A hand rested briefly near my shoulder. Another adjusted the edge of the blanket. I couldn't quite tell who was where anymore. I only knew they were around me, steady and close, holding space I hadn't realized I needed. I tilted my head back, eyes half closed, breathing in the quiet. One of them shifted again beside me, his words soft, something I didn't quite catch. A hand paused near my side. Another rested gently near mine. No pressure, just presence. I felt myself leaning into them, not one in particular, just the closeness. Something inside me felt loose, less guarded. Not broken, just open. I didn't resist the stillness. Now and then my breath would catch for a moment, like I was noticing something I hadn't seen before. Something was unfolding, slowly, quietly. I didn't need to name it. Then they helped me sit again. One reached for me, steadying my hands as I found my balance. Another leaned in, forehead briefly resting against mine, quiet and unmoving. The third was behind me, fingertips light on my shoulder, as if checking I was still with them, still present, balanced. Someone said my name, I didn't know who, but it reached me like a low note held too long. I exhaled as one of them steadied me, their hand calm on my arm. Whatever had been tight in me had let go. My thoughts quieted. I held on to what was near, fabric, fingers, the closeness, and let myself stay exactly where I was. And when I stopped trying to grasp it, I just let the quiet hold me with all three still near. The room hummed softly with the distant jazz, the flicker of firelight, and the steady rhythm of breath. I could feel their presence around me, not consuming, not demanding, but patient, as though they, too, understood this was never really about them. For the first time in a long while, the ache I carried deep inside had softened. Not erased, but acknowledged. Like hands brushing gently across an old scar you no longer hide. One of them whispered, "You don't have to carry it alone anymore." Tears I hadn't noticed slipped down my cheek. Not from sadness, but from release. From the strange tenderness of being seen without being asked for anything in return. I let my head rest against the shoulder nearest me. Another hand laced gently with mine. No words. No explanations. Just the quiet understanding of those who had been waiting for me to arrive here in this moment when I was ready. The fire crackled, low and steady. The night outside pressed against the windows, but inside, the world was smaller, warmer. "I'm not broken," I whispered softly, mostly to myself. "No," one of them replied, voice like a thread of silk in the air. "You never were." The music swelled faintly, as though it, too, recognized the weight of the moment. My breath evened. My heart steadied. And as the night folded itself gently around us, I realized. Sometimes, healing doesn't come with grand declarations or dramatic revelations. Sometimes, it arrives in the spaces between words, in the hands that steady you when you don't even realize you're falling. The past was still there, but for tonight, it didn't own me. And in that quiet surrender, I finally found my peace. What did you think of that moment? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'm always reading. And if you haven't yet, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you're first to know when the next one drops. Thanks for watching.